You thought it was charm. You thought it was confidence. But behind the smile that draws you in, and the words that make you feel seen, there may be something far colder calculating your every move. There is someone in your life right now who seems magnetic, someone others admire, respect, even praise. This person always seems in control. They know how to say the right thing, look the right way, and win the right people. You have likely told yourself, they're just confident, or worse, maybe I should be more like them. But what if this confidence you admire is not confidence at all? What if it is a weapon? And what if the person you envy is not leading people, but controlling them? You are not alone in this confusion. In a world that glorifies image over authenticity, power over empathy, and charisma over truth, we have lost our ability to recognize manipulation when it wears the mask of charm. The term is narcissism, but it is not what most people think it is. This is not about someone who simply takes too many selfies or loves their reflection in the mirror. That is just pop culture's watered-down version. In truth, narcissism is one of the most dangerous psychological tools ever studied, one part of what psychologists call the dark triad. And among the triad, narcissism is often the most deceptive, the most seductive, and perhaps the most master manipulator of all. Because while psychopathy might scare you, and Machiavellianism might outmaneuver you, narcissism will make you trust it. It will make you defend it. It will make you believe it loves you until it breaks you, and you still do not know why. You see, narcissism does not steal your trust. It earns it, and then it weaponizes it against you. And here is what they do not want you to know. Narcissists do not just walk among us. They often lead us. They are your boss, your coach, your influencer. Sometimes they are your friend. And the worst part, they believe they are the hero in your story, not the villain. So how do you spot them? Why are they so good at hiding in plain sight? Why do we mistake their manipulation for leadership? And more importantly, why do you, even now, feel a strange mixture of fear, admiration, and curiosity? That is not an accident. That is the effect of a master manipulator. They study you, they echo you, they predict your needs and then pretend to fulfill them. They know how to make you feel validated, right before they make you question your worth. And by the time you realize what is happening, your sense of self has already begun to erode. Still think narcissism is just about self-love? Then ask yourself, why do you keep giving people the benefit of the doubt when they show no empathy? Why do you keep feeling guilty for asking for emotional safety? Why do you second-guess your reality when someone consistently blames you for everything? You have likely encountered this before, maybe more than once, maybe right now. But there is something deeper, something far more disturbing that we need to face. What if narcissism is not just a personality trait? What if it is a survival strategy, crafted, perfected, and deployed in a world that rewards illusion more than truth? And if that is true, you need to ask yourself something dangerous. Have you been a victim, or have you become one of them? The answer is more complex than it seems. But before we expose the reality, before we dissect what narcissism really is, and how it silently controls the people around it, we must confront the most disturbing lie we have all been taught since childhood. A lie that has blinded us to the manipulation hiding behind charisma. A lie that has turned the most harmful trait into one of the most admired. And if you stay with me to the end, you will not just see the truth. You may never see people the same way again. You were told that confidence is a sign of strength. That charm means someone is trustworthy. That the louder someone speaks with conviction, the more you should listen. Since childhood, this belief has been reinforced by teachers, media, even your own parents. Look them in the eyes, they told you. Speak with authority. And so we grew up thinking that those who appear certain, who never hesitate, never question themselves, must know something we do not. But that belief is not just flawed. It is dangerous. Because the world does not reward authenticity. It rewards presentation. And narcissism is built to present better than anyone else. The truth is, We have been primed to admire narcissists, the confident executive who dominates the meeting, the influencer who always has the perfect angle, the perfect opinion, the partner who love bombs you, then disappears the moment you express a need. They are all playing the same game, and that game is not about connection, it is about control. At the core of this illusion is one disturbing fact. Narcissists do not need to be authentic to be effective. They only need to be believable. And because they are experts at crafting personas that look powerful, emotionally stable, and even caring, we hand them our trust. This is the root of why narcissism has become the master manipulator in modern society. It has learned how to use the lie we were told to its advantage. It hides within the very things we value most: confidence, leadership, passion, charisma. And this is where the dark triad becomes relevant. Psychologists Paulhus and Williams identified the dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, as distinct but overlapping. Among them, narcissism is the most deceptive because it blends self-absorption with likability. A narcissist does not need to be cruel to control you, they just need to be admired. But here is the problem you are not told. Admiration can be a prison. The more you admire them, the more you excuse them. The more you excuse them, the more they exploit you. And the more they exploit you, the more you convince yourself it must be your fault. Now ask yourself, who taught you that success looks like dominance? That being emotional is weakness? That doubting someone's charm is just insecurity? These lessons were not just accidental, they were cultural programming, delivered through systems that favor power, not truth. So when a narcissist enters your life, you do not see them for what they are. You see what you were trained to see: a leader, a visionary, a role model. But what you are really looking at is someone who sees others as tools, not partners, not equals, tools. Someone who can mimic emotions without feeling them, who can appear generous while manipulating outcomes, who can speak like a healer while thinking like a predator. You want to believe people are mostly good, that no one would intentionally play with your reality, that nobody would fake love, fake empathy, fake sincerity, just to get what they want. But narcissism exists because these lies work, and they work best on people who were never taught how to question what looks like strength. So what does that mean for you? It means you need to ask harder questions. Who benefits from your belief in them? Who makes you feel special just long enough to obey? And why do you still crave their approval, even after they hurt you? It is not your weakness that draws them. It is your willingness to doubt yourself when they act with certainty. Because here is something that narcissists know better than most. The one who controls perception, controls power, and that power is addictive. We are only just beginning to pull back the curtain. In the next turn of this path, we will dive into where this distortion begins, not in society but in the human mind itself. And once you understand how a narcissist is created, you might start to wonder how many more are being shaped right now, including those closest to you. If this is resonating with you, if you have seen these patterns before, I invite you to leave a comment, not for me, but for you, to name it, to call it out, and subscribe, not for views, but because the truth you are starting to see only gets darker from here. To understand narcissism as a master manipulator, you need to know where it begins, not in boardrooms, not on social media stages, but in early childhood, often within the quiet chaos of family systems that reward image over identity. The child who becomes a narcissist is not always raised with too much love. Sometimes it is the opposite. What they are given instead is performance-based affection. Love becomes conditional. Approval is earned, not felt. Mistakes are punished with silence. Achievements are praised without warmth. Clinical psychologist Otto Kernberg wrote extensively about narcissistic personality structure, explaining how such individuals construct a false self to survive. When a child senses that being real brings punishment, but pretending brings acceptance, the choice is no longer a choice. They create a version of themselves that is more admired than loved, and they hide behind it indefinitely. But the environment does not always come from abuse. Sometimes it is built from overvaluation. Studies by Eddie Brommerman and Brad Bushman revealed that children who are constantly told they are superior, more special, or destined for greatness, without being taught empathy, develop narcissistic traits at higher rates. They are not loved for who they are, but for the image they project. Either way, narcissism becomes armor, an adaptation, a distorted mirror that reflects back only what is admired, never what is authentic. Inside, many narcissists carry a fragile core, deeply sensitive to shame and rejection, but that sensitivity is never shown. Instead, it is covered in grandiosity. If you challenge their ego, they attack. If you doubt their intentions, they withdraw or punish. Vulnerability is treated like poison. Control becomes the only way to feel safe. And here lies the irony. Narcissism, despite its loud confidence, is often rooted in fear. Fear of being ordinary, fear of being unseen, fear of being nothing. But instead of processing that fear, they project it. They make others feel small, so they can feel large. They reject before they are rejected. This is what makes narcissism such an effective role in the dark triad. It wears a mask, but the mask is not a lie. It is a survival tool, crafted through years of emotional conditioning, silence, and subtle neglect. Psychological studies on narcissistic personality disorder show that while genetics play a role, environment is often the more powerful force. Repeated reinforcement of performance over connection shapes the mind to value manipulation over empathy, image over intimacy, gain over genuineness. What they cannot feel inwardly, they manufacture outwardly. Attention becomes the substitute for affection. Control becomes the replacement for intimacy. Praise becomes the fix, like a drug that must be topped off daily. And when the attention fades, so does their stability. But what does this mean for you? It means the narcissist is not simply cruel. They are calculated, because calculation works. And most disturbingly, they believe their behavior is justified. In their mind, people are unpredictable, dangerous, or weak. So they must stay ahead, control the narrative, dominate the room. If you challenge them, they will not reflect. They will retaliate. If you expose them, they will smear you. They cannot afford to lose the illusion, because the illusion is the only thing holding them together. So when you meet someone who seems perfect, who never admits fault, who always seems to have an answer ready, a story rehearsed, a compliment returned faster than you gave it, ask yourself what they learned about connection when they were young, and ask why they needed to learn it at all. Because narcissism is not just a personality, it is a response to a world that punished sincerity, a coping strategy that grew sharper, colder, more effective over time, and eventually it becomes not a mask but a face that now learns how to become yours. Narcissists do not overpower people by force. They charm them first. Charm is their entry point, not their destination. It is not sincere, it is functional. It works because it plays into what people want to believe about others. And once you believe, you lower your guard. This is why narcissism is such a master manipulator. It does not push, it pulls. It draws attention, trust, and loyalty before it ever demands anything. Most victims of narcissists never realize what is happening until the damage is done. And even then, many still believe it was their fault. You meet someone, and they are intensely interested in you. They seem fascinated by your thoughts, your story, your energy. They mirror your language. They agree with your values. They recall things you told them, even small details. You feel seen. You feel chosen. This is not accidental. It is a script. Psychological research on narcissistic behavior, particularly by scholars like Mitja Back, shows that narcissists consistently make stronger first impressions than others. They come across as confident, exciting, socially skilled. They often rank higher in likability upon initial meeting. and even higher in perceived leadership potential. But that perception does not hold over time. The more people get to know them, the more those impressions decline, the charisma fades, the coldness surfaces. But by then, you are already inside the frame. You are invested. The charm of a narcissist is often described as magnetic, but it is closer to reflective. They do not attract because of who they are. They attract because they become who you want them to be, temporarily. This is called mirroring. It is one of the most effective manipulation tools used in emotional psychology. The narcissist studies you, learns your preferences, echoes your language, your interests, your sense of humor. They create the illusion of connection not through authenticity, but through mimicry. Once that bond is formed, they begin to shift. The jokes have a sharp edge. The compliments are replaced by comparisons. The attention you once received is slowly withdrawn, replaced by coldness or indifference. You feel confused. You start working harder to bring back the person you met in the beginning. You think, maybe I did something wrong. But that beginning version of them was never real. It was a tool. Narcissists are not interested in mutuality. They are interested in leverage. Charm is used to gain trust. Trust is used to gain access. And access is used to gain control. You will often hear people say, "He was so amazing at first," or "She used to be so attentive, so loving." The pattern is consistent. The love, if it can be called that, is conditional. It only exists when it serves their image, their need, their control. This is why narcissism, more than other traits within the dark triad, is often the most dangerous. It convinces you to hand over your emotional power willingly. It does not steal it. It waits for you to offer it, then makes you believe you were wrong to want anything in return. The charm is not a mistake. It is a calculated investment. And when your usefulness ends, the mask drops, not all at once, but gradually, just enough to make you question yourself, but not them. You think, maybe I'm being dramatic, maybe I'm too sensitive, maybe they're just busy. But here is a question to ask yourself. If someone sees all your goodness in the beginning, then treats it as worthless later, what changed? Was it you, or was it simply that their goal was met? The discomfort you feel in that question is what makes narcissism so hard to name. It operates inside the margins of emotional experience, not always through abuse, sometimes through absence, not always through cruelty, sometimes through silence. Charm is the most effective weapon a narcissist carries, because it makes you participate, and that participation is what makes you feel complicit. Even after you start to suffer, you trusted someone who made you feel chosen, and now, that trust is used to keep you silent. Once the mask of charm begins to slip, narcissists do not retreat. They adapt, they escalate, not through obvious violence or threats, but through subtle psychological warfare. These tactics are not improvised, they are rehearsed through a lifetime of control. The most effective among them is gaslighting. Gaslighting is not just lying, it is lying with the intent to make you doubt your memory, your perception, even your sanity. It is when someone changes the facts of what just happened and insists with certainty that you misunderstood. You question yourself, you feel confused, you hesitate the next time you speak. Gaslighting works because you want to believe people are telling the truth, that your experience matters, that someone who says they love you would not play with your mind, but with narcissism. Love is not what it seems. Love is leverage, and confusion is control. Then comes blame shifting. Every mistake becomes your fault, even when the narcissist clearly causes pain or creates conflict. They twist the narrative until you feel responsible. If you are upset, you are overreacting. If you need space, you are abandoning them. If you speak up, you are the problem. This does not happen loudly. Often, it comes in calm, rational tones. You find yourself apologizing even when you are the one hurt. You doubt your right to be upset. You think, maybe I am too emotional, but that is not self-awareness. That is manipulation at work. Another tactic they use is intermittent reinforcement. They give affection, validation, and attention, but only in unpredictable cycles. One moment, they are warm, the next cold. You do not know why. You try to earn the good version of them back, so you become more compliant, more tolerant, more silent. This behavior mirrors the patterns studied in addiction research. Variable rewards are more addictive than consistent ones. Just like a slot machine that pays out sometimes, the narcissist conditions you to chase approval. Even as it becomes more rare, that chase becomes obsession, and obsession makes you overlook abuse. Now add triangulation. The narcissist involves other people to provoke jealousy or insecurity. They compare you to someone else, imply others treat them better, or suggest you are lucky to have them at all. You start to compete for their attention. You try harder. You accept less. In psychological studies on emotional abuse, these patterns are not random. They create dependency. The narcissist becomes the only source of validation and also the source of anxiety. You rely on the person who harms you to feel okay. That is not love. That is a trauma bond. These tactics work because they unfold slowly. They do not feel like attacks. They feel like miscommunications. You want to talk it out, fix it, understand, but you cannot reason with manipulation. You can only recognize it. So look closer. Do you feel confused after conversations that should bring clarity? Do you often blame yourself for things you never caused? Do you walk on eggshells to avoid setting someone off, yet they still explode? These are not normal relationship patterns. These are symptoms of narcissism as a master manipulator. And because the damage is emotional, not physical, people often dismiss it. But make no mistake, it leaves scars, deep ones. In the dark triad, narcissism is uniquely built to hide its damage. The narcissist often presents as the reasonable one, while the victim looks unstable, reactive, or dramatic. This is how the cycle stays hidden, and it is how victims begin to silence themselves. But ask yourself, why does one person have so much power over how you feel, speak, and think? And more importantly, why do you keep justifying their behavior when your own sense of self is disappearing? It does not happen all at once. That is what makes it so effective. People do not fall for narcissists because they are weak. They fall because they are human. Narcissism as a master manipulator knows exactly how to find the parts of you that are open. Your desire to be seen, to be chosen, to feel safe. These are not flaws, they are needs. And when those needs go unmet for too long, anyone who offers to fulfill them feels like a gift. At first, this is where the deepest damage begins. Not in what the narcissist does to you, but in what they awaken in you. The longing, the hope, the craving for something that finally feels right. They do not force their way in. You invite them, because they offer something you have needed for years: validation without judgment. Psychologists who study attachment theory, like John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, revealed how early relational experiences shape how we connect later in life. If you were raised in a home where love was unpredictable, where emotions were ignored, or where approval was earned through perfection, then you are more likely to form anxious or avoidant bonds. You do not trust easily, but once you do, you hold on too tightly. Narcissists can sense that, not in some mystical way, but through observation. They test boundaries subtly. They notice how quickly you respond to praise. They see how you justify their coldness. They recognize your silence as permission. What makes this dynamic so powerful is that it feels like recognition. You feel seen, understood, but you are not. What is being seen is not your soul, it is your pattern. The narcissist is not connecting with you. They are aligning with your emotional vulnerabilities, then using them to bind you. You want to believe they care. You need to believe it. Because if they do not, what does that say about all the time, energy, and love you have already given? That belief keeps people stuck for years. The narcissist withdraws, comes back, shows just enough warmth to spark the memory of who they pretended to be. You think, maybe this is the real version. Maybe things will go back to the way they were. But they never do. Because that version of them never existed. You begin to shrink. You stop expressing needs because it triggers distance. You stop asking questions because it brings conflict. You learn how to adapt, and the more you adapt, the more they control. This is the emotional hook. You are not addicted to the person. You are addicted to the feeling they gave you before they changed, and the hope that if you say the right thing, behave the right way, love them hard enough, they will bring it back. But narcissists do not reward loyalty. They exploit it. They never intended to build a relationship. They intended to build a system with them at the center, and you orbiting around their needs. So ask yourself something. Why do you feel afraid to walk away from someone who treats you poorly? Why does silence from them hurt more than honesty ever could? Why does one person's approval carry more weight than your own? You are not weak for falling into this. You are human. But staying blind to it, that is where the real damage begins. Narcissism preys on emotional hunger, and once you realize that, you need to look at what you have been starving for. The narcissist did not give you anything real. They gave you a taste of what you wish the world had always given you. And now you are chasing a ghost, one they created, not to love you, but to keep you invested. You are surrounded by it. On your phone, on your screen, in your workplace, and in your relationships. The behaviors you now recognize as manipulative are not just tolerated, they are celebrated. Because narcissism is no longer just a hidden trait in damaged individuals. It is becoming a cultural standard. The rise of social media has redefined how we measure worth. Not by integrity, not by honesty, by visibility. Followers, likes, impressions, metrics designed to reward those who can capture attention, not those who can hold it with meaning. This is how narcissism functions as a master manipulator in public life. It does not need to hide. It thrives in plain sight. You scroll through a curated highlight reel of filtered perfection, perfect smiles, perfect meals, perfect outrage, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder why your own life feels so small in comparison. This is not just comparison, it is conditioning. The more you admire those who show power without humility, confidence without reflection, dominance without empathy, the more you internalize those values as admirable. Slowly, without knowing it, you start to suppress your vulnerability. You start to measure your worth by how well you perform, not how deeply you connect. In this environment, the narcissist becomes the model. They know how to pose, how to speak in sound bites, how to appeal to emotion while hiding the truth. They do not seek connection. They seek control of the narrative, and the public rewards them for it. Celebrities, politicians, influencers. They are often praised for qualities that in personal relationships would be red flags. Arrogance is reframed as leadership. Manipulation is rebranded as strategy. Exploitation becomes hustle. This cultural glorification of narcissistic traits was tracked in studies by Twenge and Keith Campbell, who documented the measurable rise of narcissism in younger generations. Their research pointed toward a steady increase in narcissistic traits as societal values shifted toward materialism, appearance, and individualism over community and depth. The implications are not abstract. People are now more afraid to be honest than to be fake, more afraid to be vulnerable than to be performative, and the cost of that is showing everywhere. From shallow relationships to unstable leadership to a growing crisis of identity. Ask yourself, how often do you feel pressure to be impressive instead of genuine? How often do you hide your struggles because you believe people only want your best moments? You are not alone, but this is the trap. A world that rewards narcissistic behavior creates more of it, and those who do not conform are either invisible or ignored. Here is the irony. While narcissism thrives in attention, it is not fueled by connection. It needs admiration, not understanding. It wants applause, not intimacy. So the more it spreads, the more disconnected we become. And when that disconnection turns inward, people begin to question their own worth. They see others winning, speaking louder, shining brighter, and they wonder if maybe they are not enough. That internal doubt is what narcissists count on, because in a world full of insecure people, the one who pretends to have it all together gains instant power. But how do you fight something that the world keeps feeding? Not by shouting louder, not by performing harder, but by seeing clearly. You need to recognize that not every confident voice speaks truth. Not every viral moment has value. Not every charismatic face is a safe one. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones everyone else is clapping for. You were told they are strong, unshakable, confident, in control. That is the illusion they need you to believe. But behind the carefully crafted mask, the one that radiates power and poise, lies something much less stable, something fragile, hollow and volatile. At its core, narcissism is not fueled by self-love. It is built on self-doubt, the kind that never fades, no matter how much attention is given, the kind that keeps gnawing at them, even in their most celebrated moments. This is what makes it a master manipulator. It hides weakness behind the performance of strength, but that performance never stops, and it never satisfies. Psychologists studying narcissistic personality disorder, such as Elsa Roningstam and others at Harvard, have shown that beneath the external grandiosity lies deep sensitivity to criticism, rejection, and failure. When a narcissist is confronted with anything that threatens their image, be it truth, feedback, or consequences, they experience what is called narcissistic injury, and when that injury occurs, it triggers narcissistic rage, withdrawal, or cold revenge. You might think this rage is about the situation. It is not. It is about the exposure, the threat of being seen, not as powerful but as inadequate. This is why they attack people who tell the truth. This is why they punish vulnerability. This is why they sabotage relationships the moment someone gets too close, because closeness brings clarity, and clarity reveals the cracks. The narcissist cannot handle emotional intimacy because it requires authenticity, and authenticity risks rejection. So instead they dominate, they control, they shape relationships in a way that allows them to remain untouchable. But they are not untouchable, not even close. Many narcissists live in a constant state of emotional instability. They experience emptiness, paranoia, and a relentless need to be seen as superior. That need becomes an obsession, and when the world fails to feed it, they collapse inward. But even in collapse, they do not turn toward healing. They turn toward blaming. They accuse others. They rewrite stories. They project their pain onto those around them, especially the ones who care the most. And this is the paradox. The person who seems so composed is emotionally unpredictable. The person who seems so admired feels completely unseen. The person who commands a room cannot sit alone in silence. The grandiosity is compensation. The confidence is armor. The charm is bait. And beneath it all is the one thing they are terrified you will see. Their identity is not real. It is built from scraps of borrowed traits, stolen admiration, and exaggerated self-stories. And like any illusion, it needs constant maintenance. The moment it is questioned, it starts to fall apart. But instead of fixing the foundation, they reinforce the mask. You begin to notice contradictions. The person who preaches honesty lies with ease. The one who claims to love you uses silence as punishment. The person who seemed so proud now seems desperate for validation, and it unsettles you, because it means the version of them you believed in never existed. It is not weakness that hides behind narcissism. It is fragility dressed as dominance. And when that fragility is exposed, even briefly, the narcissist does not break. They deflect, they retaliate, they find a new stage, a new admirer, a new source of control. But the cracks remain, and the longer they go unacknowledged, the more damage they cause, not just to others, but to themselves. This is what makes narcissism such a dangerous part of the dark triad. It is not only destructive, it is self-sustaining. It convinces itself that the pain it causes is justified, that the betrayal it delivers is protection, that the emptiness it hides is someone else's fault. By the time you realize it, you are already entangled. You have questioned your memory. You have blamed yourself. You have apologized for things that were never your fault. But beneath that confusion is a small, sharp clarity. Something does not feel right. And that feeling is your first step toward freedom. Narcissism survives in the shadows of doubt. As long as you are confused, you stay compliant. As long as you hope for change, you delay action. As long as you seek closure from the very person who breaks you, they remain in control. Naming what you are dealing with is not easy. Narcissists are masters of camouflage. They do not walk around with warning labels. They operate through implication, not confession. They use your empathy against you. That is why identifying a master manipulator requires more than evidence. It requires awareness. Start by watching their patterns. Not their words, not their promises, their patterns. Do they consistently make you question your reality? Do they withhold affection when you set boundaries? Do they treat you better in public than in private? Do they dismiss your emotions as overreactions? Patterns are not accidents, they are habits. And when the pattern is one of control, silence, gaslighting, and emotional volatility, it is not just personality, it is manipulation. You cannot disarm what you refuse to name. Call it what it is. Not love, not passion, not intensity, control, erosion, performance, narcissistic behavior. But naming it is only the beginning. The harder part is detaching from it, emotionally, psychologically, sometimes physically. This is where many people freeze. They want to stay, not because of comfort, but because of investment. You may think, I have already given so much. If I leave, it was all for nothing. That thought is not logic. It is trauma bonding. It is how the cycle sustains itself. The narcissist gives just enough hope to keep you trying, and just enough pain to keep you doubting yourself. In trauma recovery, this cycle is known as idealize, devalue, discard. It is not unique to your situation. It is a behavioral script, one that has played out in thousands of documented cases of narcissistic abuse. You are not imagining things. You are not too sensitive. You are not overthinking. You are being manipulated by someone who studied you long enough to know exactly how. Disarming this kind of manipulation does not require confrontation. It requires clarity. Boundaries are not about punishment. They are about protection. Start with psychological boundaries. Observe without reacting. Document without explaining. Speak without defending. Every time you act without guilt, you weaken the control. But be prepared. When you begin to detach, the narcissist may escalate. They may test new tactics. They may shift between cruelty and charm, between rage and affection. This is not confusion. It is strategy. Stay anchored. Do not respond to the performance. Respond to the pattern. And most importantly, reclaim your perception. What you saw, felt, and experienced matters. The more you trust your own memory, your own intuition, your own emotional intelligence, the less power their illusion holds. You do not need revenge. You do not need a final conversation. You do not need to make them understand. You need to leave their narrative and start telling your own. If this has echoed something inside you, if you have seen these patterns and now recognize the cost, I ask you to write it in the comments. Say what you have never said aloud, not because it changes them, but because it frees you. Narcissism loses its power the moment you stop playing by its rules. You wanted an answer, a way to undo the damage, a way to be sure, a way to never fall for it again. But narcissism does not leave behind a blueprint. It leaves behind a silence, an emptiness where clarity should be. And for most people, that silence is the worst part. Not the betrayal, not the gaslighting, not the confusion, but the lingering doubt about what was ever real. You keep thinking about the early days, the charm, the connection, the illusion of being seen, and that is the most disturbing truth. What you miss most may not be the person, but the version of yourself that existed when they made you feel special. But that version of you was real. Their behavior was not, This is why narcissism remains the most effective master manipulator. It hijacks not just your emotions, but your identity. It pulls you into a performance that feels like love and purpose, only to leave you questioning who you are when it ends. Some never recover, some spend years blaming themselves, others repeat the pattern with different faces, hoping this time will be different, and some wake up, not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly, in moments where something feels off, where a compliment stings instead of soothes, where silence becomes louder than words, where someone smiles and it no longer feels safe. This awareness is the beginning of something dangerous to the narcissist, and liberating to you, because when you begin to see through it, you cannot unsee it. You see it in influencers who disguise manipulation as empowerment, in leaders who silence dissent with charm, in friends who offer loyalty only when it serves their image. You begin to see the machinery behind the mask. But do not mistake awareness for immunity. You will still be tempted to excuse, to minimize, to hold on to hope. That is normal. You are not becoming cynical. You are becoming awake. The dark triad does not need darkness to thrive. It needs your permission, your silence, your belief that cruelty is just intensity, that withdrawal is just busyness, that emotional damage is just miscommunication. It is not. It is a system, one that has adapted itself into culture, family, romance, influence, and identity. And you have a choice. You can keep playing the game, clapping for people who pretend to care, praising those who control others through fear, elevating those who never listen but always speak. Or you can stop. You can start asking harder questions. You can stop confusing charm with character. You can start protecting your peace, even when it makes you look distant. Because you are not distant. You are done participating in dynamics that erode your sense of reality. Done chasing validation from those who cannot love without control. Done confusing attention with affection. There will never be a perfect way to expose a narcissist. They are too skilled, too protected, and often too convincing. But there is one thing they cannot survive: truth spoken without fear. So if you found yourself in this, even in fragments, take a moment. Say something in the comments. Say it clearly. Say it without apologizing. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Not because they will change, but because they deserve the chance to understand. Maybe for the first time, subscribe not because this channel needs numbers, but because this conversation is not finished. What you just learned is only the surface. The psychology of power, perception, identity, and manipulation runs far deeper, and it is time to explore it. But only if you are ready to see what most people choose to ignore.